Welcome back to another quick review. I don't know if I jumped the trigger on the intro. Welcome back to another quick review. Today we are talking about Words of Radiance, another book review by Brandon Sanderson. Yeah, if you don't know, a while back, I think about a month ago at this point, I did a quick review on The Way of Kings. I just now finished Words of Radiance, and I wanted to talk about it. Get this out of the way. I enjoyed this book more than Way of Kings. There were certain moments where I was like, Way of Kings could be better, but you get to a certain point in this book, it's like, okay, yeah, no, this is better. This book is great. This book is phenomenal. It's a book that I obviously got through faster than Way of Kings. Way of Kings took me about 2 months to get done just because life was messing me up. I got through this in about a month. This book is great. I kind of want to dive into more specific things rather than just like overall, like, yo, yeah, the writing is good. The characters are good. The storyline is good. The plot, like that's not what I want to talk about. But I'm going to dive into specifics. So obviously, spoiler warning, click off here. Everything that I did just say applies. But, click off here, spoiler warning. In terms of specifics I want to talk about, specifically are talking about like characters and character plot points that I think from Way of Kings to this there's a natural evolution of these characters and of these of their arcs and these plot points that really work. Some better than others, but they still really work, right? And to start with my personal favorite character, let's start with Kaladin for a moment. Love his arc. I think his arc is phenomenal, especially towards the latter half of the book. Now, trying to fit in with Dalinar's army, but as well as the clashing of ideals, his own biases and opinions, and personal trauma that he has faced versus what's right and the consequences that that causes, right? Like the second half of the book specifically with everything that happens with Syl and motion whatnot, and the king. I just think that the clashing of ideals and him trying to figure out what's actually right and what he should be doing is just I think just an amazing way to progress Kaladin, and even so much as even you get back to the light eyes and dark eyed thing, just kind of navigating his opinions through that, I think is amazing. Shallan's arc. Originally, so I normally when I try to do quick reviews, I go off the top, like try to go off my head so I don't stutter and get stuck and start repeating stuff. But for this one, I physically could not do that. I had to write stuff down as I was thinking about it. Usually, when I wrote the thoughts, I had written this before I finished the book, just because it was my thoughts in the moment of what I was thinking. And so the original thing that I wrote down for Shallan's arc was I love it as it feels like the character was coming into her own, not just a character that's like so specifically tied to Jasna, right? And her backstory was just so tragic, and it made me understand her character way more. And then what I originally wrote was my only issue is that at some point in the last 200 so pages, it seemed that story just seems to abruptly end. That's incorrect. Because then I read chapter 88 and I was like, okay, never mind. What in the world? Right? It's like Shallan's backstory and a decent amount of development seems to take a back seat for a little bit just to progress the plot forward, and I get that. But then you get to that chapter, you're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is phenomenal. Yeah, Shallan is great. Adeline just becomes way more likable in this book. I liked him before already. Like I already enjoyed the character of Way of Kings, but I think he just gets so much better in this book. His interactions with Kaladin and Shallan, his determination, his ability to know when to get into gear, and throw all the silliness aside, and whatnot, or even towards Kaladin, the pettiness aside, right? I I just I love that character. That character is like so just like spontaneous and energetic in a world or in a setting in which those characters are around, but they're not, like main characters. They're not like mainstays. And then what happens at the end, chapter 89, I think it was, man. Phenomenal stuff. Dalinar was weird, as you don't get his POV for most of the book compared to Way of Kings. It's mostly Dalinar and other POVs. I think there are a lot of interesting character decisions made with him that are that are weird, like that they're interesting, but ultimately they do make sense and culminates at the end of the book very well. So I could put weirdness aside with some of the things that go on with Dalinar, his arc, and becoming a tyrant essentially. I think it was very well executed, and I think works for what it just kind of works. Like the weirdness aside, it works. Pattern, my goat. Pattern is that individual. He's my goat, my guy. A lot of the plot points converge really well, especially getting into the end of the book. It's not, there's some things that could be stiff, like could be clarified just a little bit better, but for the most part, it's not, horribly confusing. I love what's done with the Parshendi in this book and how their POV, giving them POV as insight as to what they're doing and essentially humanizing them in a sense, even if, where that leads to them is terrible. Humanizing them in a sense, giving them those interlude chapters, trying to figure out what they're doing in comparison to what our main characters are doing. I think it's just phenomenal. I think it's great. In the interludes overall were much better. There are some that, oh my goodness, can we move on? But I think overall a lot of the interludes were much better. I think Lift's interlude, that was a fun one. And the moment, because it was like, it feels like there's nothing going on, and then like I saw something specific happen in Lift's interlude that was like, oh, hold up, let's lock in for a moment. It was just really fun. I know just because of that, I know Lift is going to have to be like a very important character going forward. I can't wait to see what she does, because I would be horrendously shocked if she isn't important in any way, shape, or form. Right. Another character thing, Renarin. That's a weird one, because it's like I know there was a build up. There's specifically, I'm talking about what happens with him at the end of the book, like the second to last chapter, right? Or at least chapter 89 before the epilogue. I know there's some build up, but it did seem to come out of nowhere, right? Not sure how I feel about it, and I wish the execution was better, because like I said, there were multiple things that give hints that Renarin's going through something. But it also just kind of felt like, yeah, kind of came out of nowhere. I'm not sure what that was about. But end of all things, I am still very curious to see where that goes. It's like the Dalinar thing. It was like my gripes with how it's executed aside, I'm very curious, and I'm just glad that I had that curiosity. Glad that I'm excited to see where that goes in the future. And then the last thing I really want to talk about is these characters' relationships. Like I could talk about world building all I want and whatnot, but like the character relationships, I think, are at a peak, at a high in this book. The specific moment that I wanted to talk about was in chapter 71. It was called Vigil, right? It's when Shallan and Kaladin are stuck in the chasms, right? And one of the things that the moment that it kind of solidified that, oh yeah, my goodness, this book is like even better than Way of Kings, was the conversation that they were having, and Shallan and Kaladin actively not explaining their backstories, like explaining where they come from, the things that they've been through. And it was like a specific paragraph that just like I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. It was just like one specific paragraph that I adored. It was like masterful writing. I'd have to go find the paragraph specifically, but it's amazing. It was amazing. And then like I said, the relationships between Kaladin and Bridgefour, and even though Shallan and Gaz, and Jasna that took a backseat. Shalana Pattern, Dalinar and Kaladin, Adeline and Kaladin, Adeline and Shallan, like Shalana and Kaladin, as I said. I just think those relationships and those they really do thrive now that it's just not built up anymore like Way of Kings. Now that everybody's together and these different stories are intertwining and are actually going somewhere. And of course, the book is just, just the book, just in general, is epic, right? It is a really epic book, especially towards like those last 100 pages. Oh my god, it's so good. But yeah, that's going to be it for this quick review. I'm very excited to see where things go next. I'm very excited to see if we explore new places in Oathbringer. I have it sitting on my desk over there. I'm going to start tomorrow. I'm very excited to see where things go next. Very excited to see what happens, especially with that epilogue. I'm excited to see what we do, where we go. Yeah, this book is like a 10 out of 10. I genuinely loved it. I had a ball with it. I cannot wait to move on. And then after that, I might take a break. I have, Red Rising sitting in my bedroom at home. So, who knows? Who knows what I'll do after I finish Oathbringer. But yeah, thank you for watching. See ya. Bye.